It rained the day my father died. Not the kind of rain that rushes down like grief, but the quiet kind. Steady, unending. Like the world was whispering condolences no one wanted to hear. I remember the sound of it against the church windows, soft and persistent, drowning out the priest's voice. People spoke in muted tones, as if afraid to disturb the air around Evelyn, my stepmother. She stood by the casket in her black coat, flawless as always, her blonde hair pinned tight, her eyes dry. I watched her hands, perfectly still, not a tremble, not a flinch, and I wondered if she'd ever loved him. When it was over, I stayed behind as the others left. The rain had turned into mist, curling around the gravestones like ghosts that refused to leave. The smell of wet earth mixed with lilies. I reached out and touched the casket one last time. "Goodbye, Dad," I whispered. "I'll find out what really happened," because deep down I knew something wasn't right. He'd been healthy, hiking last month, texting me about retirement plans, and then suddenly, a heart attack in his sleep. No autopsy. Evelyn insisted it wasn't necessary. That night, I drove back to his house, the house I grew up in, and parked across the street. The lights were on inside, warm, golden, like nothing had changed. But the place felt wrong, too quiet, too neat. Evelyn had always been meticulous, but now the house looked staged, like a museum display of our life. His books were gone from the shelf, the old leather chair he loved, gone too. Even the photographs on the mantel had been replaced. Only one remained, my father and Evelyn, smiling in the garden. She opened the door before I could knock. "Claire," she said softly, her tone smooth as silk. "You shouldn't be here." "I came to pick up some of Dad's things," I said. "His things are being taken care of," she replied. "The lawyer will explain everything tomorrow." "I just want his watch," I told her. "He promised it to me." Her lips curved into that polite, distant smile I always hated. "Of course. I'll have it sent to you." She started to close the door, but I caught it with my hand. "I'll wait," I said. Our eyes met. Hers didn't blink. For a moment, I thought she might slam the door anyway. But then she sighed, a theatrical, tired little sigh, and walked upstairs. When she returned, she held the watch in her hand. Silver scratched familiar. "Here," she said. "Now please, Claire, let's not make this harder than it already is." I took it without a word and turned to leave. But as I stepped off the porch, I saw something. A flicker of light in the study window. Dad's study. Evelyn had said she locked it after the will was signed. That was the first time the idea took root. That something inside that house didn't belong to her. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw my father's face, calm but not peaceful. He'd looked unfinished. Around 2 a.m., I pulled the watch from my bag. I turned it over in my hand, running my thumb along the back where he'd engraved my initials years ago. Something felt off. There was a slight ridge near the hinge, like the backplate had been opened before. I pressed it, and it clicked. A hidden compartment popped open. Inside was a tiny brass key, barely an inch long, and a folded note. My hands shook as I opened it. His handwriting, unmistakable. "If anything happens to me, find the truth. The key will show you where to start." That was all. No signature, no explanation. The next morning, I went to the lawyer's office. Evelyn was already there, wearing pearls and a perfect smile. The reading of the will lasted less than 10 minutes. Everything, the house, the accounts, the art, the vineyard shares, went to her. I got nothing. When I looked at her, she gave me a sympathetic nod, as if to say, "Don't take it personally, dear." I wanted to scream. Instead, I smiled back, because now I had a reason to stay quiet and a plan to begin. That afternoon, while she met with estate planners, I parked near the house again. I waited until she left, her silver Lexus disappearing down the street, before walking up the path. The spare key was gone, but the side door still had the old latch. Dad never upgraded it. It took me less than a minute to slip inside. The air smelled like lavender polish and emptiness. I moved through the rooms quietly, the living room, the kitchen, the hallway that still creaked near the stairs. Everything was the same, yet lifeless, like a replica of what once was. I went to the study. The door was locked. The brass key from the watch fit perfectly. The room smelled of paper and dust. His desk was bare except for a lamp and a single photograph. My father holding a baby. Me. The drawers were empty except one. Inside there was a box, dark wood, heavy, with a faint engraving on the lid, M.H. My father's initials were D.H. I opened it. Letters, dozens of them. All addressed to him, from my mother. Except my mother had died 20 years ago. I sat on the floor, the letters spread around me like leaves. The first one was dated 2005, a year after she supposedly died in a car crash. The handwriting was hers. No doubt, David, I'm safe. Please don't tell her where I am. She can't know. For Claire's sake, pretend I'm gone. I felt my throat close. Who was her? And why would my father pretend my mother was dead? As I kept reading, the story began to form. Fragments of fear, love, desperation. Letters sent from different places. Portland, Denver, somewhere in Arizona. Each signed with my mother's name. The last one stopped abruptly, mid-sentence. No date, no envelope, just words. If she finds out, she'll... The rest was torn off. I didn't hear Evelyn come in until it was too late. Breaking and entering, Claire? Her voice was calm, almost amused. I froze. She stood in the doorway, her expression unreadable, her phone in her hand. What are you doing? She asked. I held up one of the letters. Where's my mother, Evelyn? Her eyes flicked to the paper, then back to me. I don't know what you're talking about. These are her letters, I said, stepping closer. You lied. She didn't die in that crash. Her lips curved into that cold smile again. Be careful, dear. Grief makes people imagine things. I felt something shift inside me, something hard and clear. You killed her, didn't you? I whispered. She laughed softly. Don't be ridiculous. Then she reached for the box. I held it tight. She stepped forward, her voice lowering. Your father made choices to protect you. You should let the past rest. I looked straight at her. I will, after I know the truth. She stared at me for a long moment, then turned away. You always were stubborn, she said, walking out. Just like her. That night, I booked a room at a small motel outside the city. The box sat on the bed beside me. I reread the letters until dawn. Each one revealed another crack in the story I'd believed my whole life. Why would my mother fake her death? Why did my father stay with Evelyn? And what exactly had happened 20 years ago? When I checked the postmarks, I noticed something strange. The first few letters were mailed from Oregon. Then suddenly, nothing. For 15 years, until one sent last year. From a small town east of Seattle. It was the same handwriting, but this one wasn't addressed to my father. It was addressed to Evelyn. The next morning, I drove there. The town was small. One gas station, a diner, a handful of houses hidden behind pines. I went to the post office and asked if they could trace the P.O. box. The clerk looked at me suspicious. I'm sorry, miss, he said. We can't give out that information. I slipped him $20. He hesitated, then leaned closer. It belonged to a woman named Margaret Hale, my mother's maiden name. I thanked him, walked out, and sat in my car until the shaking stopped. Margaret Hale, alive, after 20 years. As I drove back toward the city, the rain began again, soft, endless, whispering against the windshield. I thought about my father's note. Find the truth. I was closer now, but I could feel something darker waiting underneath. Because if my mother was alive, why had she stopped writing? And why had Evelyn kept those letters hidden all these years? The answers, I knew, were still inside that house. And this time, I wouldn't leave until I had them. The following week, I couldn't think about anything else. The letters, the key, the unfinished sentence. I'd spent my whole life believing my mother was dead, buried under a cross with her name. But now, every truth I'd ever known felt rewritten. I needed to see what Evelyn had kept hidden for 2 decades, so I went back. It was late afternoon when I parked across the street again. The rain had turned to sleet, and the sky was the color of steel. Evelyn's Lexus was gone. Perfect. I slipped through the side gate and crossed the garden, once my father's pride, now trimmed and lifeless. The key was still on my chain. It fit the study door like before. Inside, the air was colder than the rest of the house. I pulled open every drawer, every cabinet. Nothing new until I saw the rug. It had been moved slightly, its corner curled. Underneath, a faint outline in the wood, a small square hatch. I knelt down and pressed it. It didn't budge. But on the side of the desk, hidden near the bottom, was a lock, old brass. The same size as the tiny key from my father's watch. It clicked softly. The hatch lifted. Below, a narrow staircase led into darkness. I hesitated, every instinct screaming no. But curiosity is a strange kind of courage. I turned on my phone's flashlight and went down. The air grew damp and musty. The smell of old paper and something else, chemicals maybe. At the bottom was a concrete room. Shelves lined the walls, stacked with boxes and binders. I picked one at random. Inside were receipts, letters, bank transfers, all signed by my father. Except one, her name, Margaret Hale. They'd been sending money, every month, even after she was declared dead. There was also a single photograph taped to the inside of the lid. It was my mother. Older, thinner, her hair streaked with gray, but alive. She stood outside a cabin, snow all around. On the back, written in my father's hand, "For as long as I can protect you." I sank onto the step, my heart pounding. He'd known she was alive. He'd helped her disappear. But from what? Then I heard a noise upstairs. Faint footsteps, then a door closing. Evelyn was home. I turned off my light and pressed myself against the wall. Her heels clicked above me, slow, deliberate. Then silence. I waited. When I finally climbed up, the study was empty, but something had changed. On the desk sat a single envelope with my name written on it. Inside, a short note. "Stop digging, Claire. Some graves are meant to stay closed." My hands shook as I read it again. It wasn't my father's handwriting. The next day, I called the private investigator my father once used. I remembered his name from the old mail pile in the hallway, Samuel Wright. He was retired now, but agreed to meet me in a cafe near the harbor. When I showed him the photo of my mother, his face went pale. "Where did you get this?" "My father's basement," I said. "She's alive, isn't she?" He hesitated. "You shouldn't be asking me that. I'm not leaving until you tell me," he sighed. "Your mother came to me once, years ago, said she was afraid of Evelyn, said she'd seen something your father was too scared to confront. I helped her disappear. What did she see?" I asked. He looked away. "I don't know, but I know this. Your father started transferring money through offshore accounts afterward. He said it was protection money." "Protection from what?" He shook his head. "From your stepmother." That night, I sat in my motel room with the box of letters beside me, staring at the rain sliding down the window. I thought of my father, loyal to a woman who terrified him, and my mother, hiding for decades because of something she couldn't unsee. There was one person who knew all of it. Evelyn. I realized I didn't need proof to destroy her. I just needed her to destroy herself. The next morning, I began my revenge. Quiet, clean, psychological. I made copies of the letters, every one of them. Then I sent a single envelope to her office with a note that said, "Doesn't the past have such a lovely way of returning?" No name, no address. I waited. By the end of the week, I saw her at the grocery store. Her hair was unbrushed, her eyes rimmed with red. She didn't see me or pretended not to. That was fine. I wasn't done. Next, I created an email from an anonymous account, attaching the photograph of my mother outside the cabin. The subject line read, "You didn't finish the job." Within hours, she called the lawyer, demanding to revise the estate transfer. He refused without my signature. Her panic was visible now, like a stain she couldn't scrub off, and that's how guilt works. It doesn't shout. It whispers until you can't sleep. A week later, I went back to the house, this time invited. Evelyn called me herself. "Claire," she said on the phone, her voice trembling for the first time, "we need to talk." When I arrived, she was sitting by the fire, a glass of wine untouched beside her. The perfect composure was gone. She looked smaller, older. "I don't know what you think you're doing," she began. "But you're playing with fire." "I'm just looking for answers," I said. "Answers to what?" "Your mother abandoned you." "She didn't," I replied softly. "She ran from you." Evelyn's jaw tightened. For a moment, I saw the real her, the one my father must have feared. "You have no idea what your mother was," she hissed. "She destroyed him." "No," I said. "You did. by pretending love was control. Her eyes flashed. She was unstable, dangerous. I covered for her to protect you both. You think your father was innocent? He helped her fake her death. I didn't react. I just let her talk, and she did. Everything spilled out. How she'd discovered the truth. How she'd blackmailed my father into silence. How my mother had threatened to expose the lies behind Evelyn's charity foundation. When she finally stopped, she realized I was recording. Her face drained of color. I turned off the phone and stood. "Thank you," I said quietly. "That's all I needed." She reached for me, panic flooding her eyes. "Claire, please. We can fix this." I shook my head. "You already did, 20 years ago." By morning, the recording was in the hands of the attorney who handled my father's estate, and an anonymous journalist. Within days, Evelyn's empire began to crumble. Her charity was exposed as a front for financial laundering. Her accounts were frozen, her name plastered across headlines. She tried calling me. I never answered. A month later, I drove out to the small town east of Seattle. The address from the old P.O. box led me to a weathered cabin by a lake, half hidden behind birch trees. Snow covered the path. My heart pounded as I walked to the door. I knocked once, no answer. Then again. Finally, the door opened. An older woman stood there, pale, fragile, but with eyes I'd known all my life. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then she whispered, "Claire?" I nodded, tears blurring my vision. She reached out, touching my face with trembling hands. "I wanted to come back," she said. "He told me to stay hidden. He thought she'd hurt you if I did." "I know," I whispered. "He tried to protect us both." She nodded slowly, her gaze distant. "He did, until it killed him." We sat by the fireplace that night, the silence between us filled with everything we couldn't say for 20 years. I told her everything about the letters, the basement, the recording, Evelyn's downfall. When I finished, she stared into the fire and said, almost to herself, "Revenge doesn't bring peace, Claire. It just clears the noise." "I know," I said. "But sometimes silence is the only justice left." Outside, the snow fell heavier, blanketing the world in white. It felt like erasure or rebirth, maybe both. Weeks later, I stood once more at my father's grave. The sky was bright for once, a thin winter sun breaking through. I placed the silver watch on the headstone. It ticked softly, steady and calm. "You kept your promise," I whispered. "Now I've kept mine." When I turned to leave, I saw Evelyn's Lexus parked across the street. She sat behind the wheel, motionless. Our eyes met for a brief second. She looked shattered, not angry, not vengeful, just hollow. Then she drove away. That was the last time I saw her. Months passed. My mother and I rebuilt what we could. The house was sold, the money redirected to real charities, the kind my father would have approved of. And for the first time in years, I slept without nightmares. But sometimes, when the rain starts at night, I still wake up thinking about him, about the quiet way he tried to protect everyone except himself. About Evelyn's face the last time she saw me, and about how revenge, when done right, doesn't look like chaos. It looks like calm, like rain on a grave, like silence finally earned.